I'm Henry Slack, and I'm a mechanical engineer, which means I deal with HVAC systems. I've got a degree from Rhodes College and another degree from Georgia Tech, and I studied indoor air for 30 years, working for U.S. Environmental Protection Agency. I'm also a distinguished lecturer for the Air Conditioning Engineers Society called ASHRAE. Okay, and onward. As you know, major pollutants, Anna has covered so well, except for radon, which uh, Derek talked about. I'm here to talk about particles, particularly COVID-related particles, but it all applies to other particles as well. They are everywhere. They're too small for us to see, but this is how we get dust bunnies under the bed and other stuff. This is why our vacuum cleaner bags fill up and why we need to change the filters in our heating and air conditioning systems. And there are lots of sources. Cooking is an amazingly large source of particles, tiny particles. Wildfires, smokes, plants, um, because they give off pollen. People, we shed skin cells. And if you have a pet, yes, the pet sheds. So that giant thing that looks like a tusk is meant to be a representation of a human hair, 50 to 70 microns. And you can see beach sand next to it. The particles we worry the most about are 10 to 1 micron or less. The 10 micron particles in this picture are the blue beads sort of going around the human hair or sitting on top of it. And then the PM 2.5, the tiny particulate matter, is this string of red beads over the blue one. So it's pretty small. Another picture, the 10 micron particle is on the right. These we show them as round. Most of them really aren't round, but they act round. The PM 2.5 is the brown one in the middle. On the left is the coronavirus particle, 0.1 microns. So that's even tinier. The good news is we can filter out particles that are much, much smaller than that with masks, with filters. So it could be so much worse for us. The thing to recognize about particles as well is that they are a serious cause of health effects. The Lawrence Berkeley National Laboratory did a study in 2011 that said tiny particles are worse for us than radon, they're worse than secondhand smoke. And one reason for that is because most of us aren't exposed to secondhand smoke. A lot of us are exposed to radon, but we're all exposed to these tiny particles. They have serious cardiovascular effects on the elderly, affecting the heart. But beyond that, it affects unborn babies. It affects actual babies, and everybody with lung disease can be affected as well. And the reason is, if you look carefully at the picture on the left, the bigger particles may get breathed in and out several times. They're exhaled from the upper part of our lungs. In the middle area, 1 to 5 microns, when particles that size penetrate, we have things in our blood called phagocytes that can take care of them. But you get smaller than 1 micron, and you can get deposition, meaning the particles stay there. And that's where the virus can go and stay. So why do we worry about particles from the virus in particular? Because there was a choir rehearsal in the state of Washington, Skagit Valley. Some great people there, 60 of them, even though they knew there was a chance of virus being around, they met for choir rehearsal. And they were in a room that had no ventilation, that had no good filtration. They sang for 2.5 hours. There was a 15-minute break in there. They were aware of COVID. They tried not to, breathe too much. They bumped elbows. They didn't shake hands. And of those 61 people, you went from one having COVID to 53 people having COVID in 2 weeks. And that says the virus is airborne and it can build up in spaces. So this is why we worry about viral particles and airborne COVID. Of the 1,500 known super spreader cases we have, 3 happened from outdoors where the people were never inside. But, that's around 1,500 cases that pretty surely spread indoors. The 3 V's for super spreading events. V's a nice thing to use. The venue, they're indoors. So if you're outdoors, you're safer. Ventilation, and usually there was none. And then vocalization, people were talking or singing. So maybe if you go on a silent retreat, you can spend time indoors, but that's what we're seeing right now. And so we worry about the space indoors. The good news is we know how to control things indoors. The best thing always is control the source. If it's outside, you don't bring it in. If it's inside, you deal with it and get rid of the source. I'll come back to these, but these are the big ideas for you. Second big way we deal with things is ventilation. Bring in more outside air, you can dilute the particles. Or sometimes we use exhaust, and this is why bathrooms have exhaust fans, because we can sometimes have moisture or odor problems in bathrooms, and exhausting this stuff is a great thing to do. And then third is air cleaning. You remove the stuff from the air. Some of us run dehumidifiers now. Some of us have air cleaners, literally. And we all have filters on our HVAC systems. And commercial buildings often use filtration when they bring in outside air, because indeed, we are fortunate that you don't build a skyscraper and seal it up. No, they're required to have the capacity to bring in outside air in those things. There actually are a couple other things that can work for COVID that I'm not really going to go into. One, hospitals use UV lights. These are expensive. You don't need one in your home if you can keep people out, which is the second sort of solution. Move the people away from the problem. So if you have somebody who has lung disease and so on, maybe they shouldn't go to, a concert with 20,000 other people, or go singing with 60 people in a room without good outside air ventilation. So moving the people away from the problem can help. Our real source control for COVID is what we've already been doing: hand washing, right? Wearing masks. I don't recommend wearing a coffee filter. Distancing, which works pretty well for short terms. Keeping sick people out of our buildings. Many of us have had our temperature checked as we came in. And even if you go inside, if you are there for a short time, you are safer than if you're there for a long time. So limiting the time indoors can help. But ventilation is also crucial. And that we can ventilate as simply as a fan in the window, or through our mechanical equipment, as we call it, the heating and air conditioning systems. What you see, that big red arrow, is pointing to an outside air intake. Why do you know it's an outside air intake? Well, it's at an angle to keep rainwater from coming in and keep birds from sitting on it, and letting gravity take things away from it so you don't get leaves clogging it up and such. And while you can put the fan in the window, or you can use a mechanical system, the fan in the window is great, it's direct and so on, but it does not heat the air that comes in or cool it if you need that. And whereas if you bring it in through the mechanical system, the HVAC system will keep the air comfortable. And so that's what happens certainly in larger buildings. But if you wanted it in your home, a day like today, it's about 70 degrees out. It's a great time to put a fan in the window. But just recognize the equipment has limits. Just like you may not always get all the heating you want from a unit, or all the cooling you want from your unit. You may not be able to bring in all the outside air you might want. Which is why there's another great thing: filters. Our HVAC systems use filters that are now rated with a system called MERV, the Minimum Efficiency Rating Value. And MERV numbers run from 1 to 20. MERV 1 is not a real good filter, but it does stop bugs, moths, and so on. MERV 20 is HEPA. Actually, everything over MERV 17 counts as HEPA. It removes a great deal of the stuff. And if you don't know what the MERV level is on your filter, just look, does it have pleats? Pleated filters generally have a higher MERV value. And the higher the MERV, though, also the harder it is to push air through the filter. If you think about it, the wall is a great filter. It doesn't allow any particles through it. Well, yes, but it doesn't allow air through it either. But we need filters that can allow air and stop particles. What you don't want to do is say, oh, I've got a MERV 1 filter here in my home heating system. I will pull it out and put in a MERV 13 or 14 filter, because it's so much harder to push air through. That's when you can burn out fan motors. So if you want to, you can indeed often upgrade your filter, but talk to an HVAC professional before you do it. Problems with filters, there are two big problems that can happen. One, our fans don't blow air all the time. I'm sitting at home, my fan's not on, which means the filter in my system is not capturing anything. And in general, we found filters work fans are working less than a quarter of the time, which means the filters are working less than a quarter of the time. And the other thing that can happen is you can have gaps in filters because, it's real easy to say, oh, yeah, I'll make it fit. It doesn't work that way. And you can get gaps in the filters. This shows a 3-inch gap from a MERV 1 filter, which is not a great filter, but nonetheless, what you learn is air is smart. If there's an easier way to do something, the air will go that way. And so the air will bypass the filter. And in this case, it left its dirt on the cooling coil in that unit. So that little 3-inch gap caused a 18-inch problem on the cooling coil. So there's another way we can use filtration that works, called a HEPA air cleaner. You heard Inez mention HEPA, high efficiency particle arrestance is what it stands for, but HEPA works just fine. And they can run all the time, unlike my home system. And HEPA air cleaners are rated by the Association of Home Appliance Manufacturers, called AHAM, and they're rated in a number called the Clean Air Delivery Rate in cubic feet of air per minute, CFM. So if you have a CADR of 100 CFM for smoke, these are rated for pollen, for smoke, and for dust. A 100, it means it's producing, in essence, 1 cubic feet. Sorry, we'll make it 120. It's producing 2 cubic feet of air every second, blowing that much clean air out, which is great. So you can tell how well it works. And this can remove COVID particles from the air. It can remove smoke particles from the air. It can remove any kind of particles from the air. The one caution if you're looking at air cleaners is look at the decibel level as well. I have seen a lovely, otherwise great looking air cleaner that was rated at 95 decibels, which is wow, loud. We're talking rock and roll loud. And so be cautious for that if you're purchasing an air cleaner. The good news about air cleaners is the calculations are pretty easy. Here I created a room or measured the room, and it's 16 by 15 feet and it's 10 feet tall, which is real easy, which means it's 240 cubic feet. You just multiply those numbers, and we'll get an air cleaner with a clean clean air delivery rate of 240 CFM for smoke, which is pushing out then 240 cubic feet of clean air per minute. And in 10 minutes, it can clean 2,400 cubic feet. It could literally, theoretically, clean all the air in that room. And that's wonderful because this can prevent the virus buildup indoors that they saw in the choir room and can keep people from getting COVID. I say it can stop super spreader events. If Pat and Chris are talking to each other 2 feet away without masks, that can spread the virus. But if they're doing it in the room with 18 other people, then an air cleaner or outside air delivery or filter can remove that. And you can make a do-it-yourself air cleaner. And some of you may have seen this. It's pretty simple. You tape a MERV 13. MERV 13 is the minimum level filter you would want to remove the COVID-sized particles, and put it in front of a box fan. And you can see from the picture, where was the fan blowing the air? Boop. This is not terrible. This is cheap. There are 2 or 3 problems. One, can you really seal well around it? And the answer is probably with good duct tape. 2, that box fan motor was not designed to push air through a filter like that. So you will have a shorter motor life. And a third thing, you don't really know how good it is. The box fan often is putting out 1,000 cubic feet of air a minute, but you put a filter like that in front, it doesn't put out 1,000. How much air is coming through? We don't know. But for an emergency, if there was suddenly smoke around, wildfire smoke from outside, this could be much worse. I also want to say that we know MERV works, we know clean air delivery rate works, and there are other things you'll see sold that may not work, and they may work. I don't know. When I was at EPA, people would come up with new stuff all the time and say, yeah, this works. And I don't know if it worked or not. There was more stuff than I could evaluate. What we do know is that people selling ozone generators, these are clearly oversold, or if they're selling what's called a plasma generator. This is not really good science. People are selling ionizers, and they have great test data that shows, the ionizer worked here in this test chamber, a small box, a few cubic feet. But that doesn't mean it will work in a room that's 200 times larger. So I consider that to be unproven. And I've seen people advertise duct cleaning to solve COVID problems. And duct cleaning will do nothing. We have no idea how clean the ducts were in that choir room, but it didn't matter. So I compare it to your brake system on your car. You go to the dealer, they say, you need new brakes. It's going to cost you $1,000. And your buddy says, I know somebody who for $500, he's got another braking system you can use. And you say, all right, let's try that. That's much cheaper. And he sells you an anchor that you throw out the window when you want to slow down. And that's what some of these are like. This car managed to stop in the picture because, it hit something. We don't need to try things that may or may not work. We need to go with what clearly works, and that is MERV filters, clean air delivery rate, and bringing in actual outside air in larger buildings. 2 more thoughts for you. One, it really, really helps to communicate with the people you're trying to protect and let them know. And it works great to say the health and safety of occupants is a top priority. Because if you don't say it, people talk, and they will say, old man Smith, he doesn't care about us. He's just caring about the bottom line, how much money he can save. So we need to be able to communicate and literally say the health and safety of occupants is a top priority. Because the psychosocial factors, the ability to think about what you're doing, the ability to bring trust, this reduces stress. And this gets people to work better. This prevents angry parents at a school, angry employees at a workplace. So those are important. And if you're involved in a larger building, it's worth thinking, was maintenance carried out properly? And you can look, make sure outside air is coming in. This is not real hard. And you probably go with the person who's maintaining the system. Make sure the filters are installed properly. I went with a doctor once in his 3-person office, and we found there were no filters in the system. We were astounded. The guy doing it probably said, "Oh, I'll come back and bring those," and he forgot. Make sure the controls work. These are all good. Or you can hire someone else to do this work. But this is pretty basic and pretty easy to do. So thank you so much. We're about to start the question and answer period, and your comments and suggestions can go into the Q&A. This is my contact information, and I'm very worried about COVID, and I'm happy to hear from people. And I do free consultations often for the nonprofit groups and others.